One lonely cowboy gave 3 desperate Apache women a single bucket of water and thought he'd never see them again. But the next morning he woke up to an impossible sight: 25 Apache women standing silently outside his ranch. They weren't there to fight. They were running from forced marriages, begging for one chance at freedom. When an armed Apache war chief arrived to take them back, the cowboy made a choice that could cost him his life. What happened next changed the destiny of every person in the desert. Stay until the end, because this unforgettable story will leave you speechless. Watch Love in the Wild West on the next video app as soon as possible. Please subscribe to my channel. Here is the English translation of the script. I have corrected the name inconsistencies, standardizing to *Wyatt, and smoothed out the narrative flow while maintaining the original tone and drama. The desert sun fell like liquid fire upon the cracked earth. Wyatt Martinez wiped the sweat from his forehead as he repaired the fence on his ranch. He had been living alone on this forgotten land for 3 years. It was a 5-day journey from the nearest town. The silence of the desert was absolute. That is why, when he heard soft footsteps behind him, his hand instinctively flew to his belt. He spun around quickly, his heart racing. 3 Apache women stood before him, young, thin, with dusty clothes and faces marked by extreme exhaustion. They carried no weapons. Their dark eyes looked at him with a mixture of hope and fear. The one in front raised her hand slowly and pointed toward the water well. She said nothing. She didn't have to. Wyatt recognized desperation when he saw it. His mind worked fast. The Apache didn't come down from the mountains without reason. The stories circulating in town always ended badly. But these women didn't seem dangerous. They seemed lost. Wyatt looked at the well, then at the women, then back at the well. Water was scarce, but not so scarce that he could deny it. He nodded. The 3 women walked toward the well with careful steps, as if expecting Wyatt to change his mind at any moment. They knelt by the bucket, drinking greedily, but without wasting a single drop. When they finished, the leader gave a small bow with her head and pointed to something on the ground. Wyatt looked down. They had left a small woven object, a bracelet made of natural fibers decorated with beads, a gift, payment for the water. Before he could say anything, the 3 women disappeared among the desert rocks as silently as they had arrived. Wyatt picked up the bracelet and examined it. The craftsmanship was extraordinary. Every knot perfect, every bead placed with precision. He put the object in his pocket and returned to his work, but his mind remained with those 3 strangers. Who were they? Where did they come from? Why were they traveling alone through the desert without protection? The afternoon passed without further surprises. Wyatt fed his horses, checked the cattle, and finished repairing the fence as the sun began to set. The desert was painted in oranges and reds when he finally walked toward the barn. But something was different. He stopped dead in his tracks. The barn door was ajar. He always closed it, always. His hand went to his belt again. He pushed the door open carefully, prepared for anything. The barn was clean, cleaner than it had been in months. The straw was arranged in perfect piles. The horse harnesses hung on hooks he had forgotten existed. The floor had been swept, and his 3 horses were brushed until they shone, with fresh hay distributed evenly in their feeders. Wyatt felt a chill run down his spine. The 3 women had returned without him seeing or hearing them. They had worked in total silence and left again. Why? He exited the barn and scanned the horizon. Nothing, just the long shadows of sunset over the deserted land. He rubbed his face, confused. In 3 years of solitude, he had learned to trust his senses, but those women moved like ghosts. He walked around his property looking for signs, tracks in the dirt, any clue of where they had entered or exited, but the hard desert soil revealed nothing. Night fell quickly, as it always does in the desert. Wyatt prepared his simple dinner, ate in silence, and lay down on his bed in the barn. He lived there because it was cooler than the main house, which needed too many repairs he never had time to make. Just as sleep began to take him, he heard something. Footsteps, soft but multiple. many of them. He sat up abruptly, fully awake. He walked to the barn window and looked out. His breath caught in his throat. On the distant horizon, barely visible in the darkness, there were lights. Not one or two, but many small points of light flickering, moving slowly across the night desert. Bonfires, camps, people, and they were coming in the direction of his ranch. Wyatt felt his heart pounding against his ribs. How many people could there be? 10? 20? More? The three women from the morning hadn't been casual visitors. They had been scouts, messengers. And now, someone else was coming. Wyatt spent the entire night awake, watching the lights on the horizon. Sometimes they seemed to get closer. Other times they remained static. He brewed strong coffee and sat by the window with his gun nearby, but untouched. He didn't want trouble. But he wasn't a fool either. The hours dragged on. The cold of the desert night seeped into his bones. The stars shone with impossible intensity in the black sky, and those distant lights remained there, like eyes watching him from the darkness. Note: original script included a channel subscription request here. Translated for completeness. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel, friends. Let me know in the comments where you are watching from. California, Texas, Florida, New York, Arizona, Mexico, Colombia. I love hearing from all of you. Dawn arrived, painting the sky in impossible colors. Wyatt left the barn, tired but alert. He walked to the front of his property, preparing for whatever was about to come. And then he saw them. His jaw dropped. Walking in an orderly line along the dusty path toward his ranch were 25 Apache women. 25, all young, all walking with silent determination. And at the front, he recognized the three from yesterday. They stopped 20 paces from him. No one spoke. The silence of the desert felt heavier than ever. Wyatt opened his mouth, but no words came out. What was happening? One of the women at the front, the same one who had pointed to the well yesterday, stepped forward. Her eyes met Wyatt's, and in that moment, he knew his life was about to change forever. Wyatt remained motionless, his heart hammering in his chest. 25 pairs of eyes watched him in silence. The desert wind lifted small clouds of dust between them, but no one moved. The woman who had led the group of three the day before took another step forward. She was young, perhaps 25 years old, with hair as black as night and a posture that radiated dignity despite the evident exhaustion on her face. Behind her, another woman stepped forward. She was smaller, with intelligent eyes that scanned the entire ranch quickly. When she spoke, her voice was clear, and her English was perfect. "My name is Chenoa. She is Nalin, our leader." The woman paused, choosing her words carefully. "We come in peace. We carry no weapons. We seek no trouble." Wyatt found his voice, though it sounded hoarse. "There are many of you." "We are 25, Chenoa confirmed. "Yesterday, 3 of us came to ask for water. You gave it to us without asking questions, without demanding anything in return. That is rare in this world." Wyatt looked at the women one by one. They all looked exhausted, with torn and dusty clothes. Some had their feet wrapped in rags because their shoes had disintegrated, but they all held their heads high. "Where do you come from?" asked Wyatt. Chenoa exchanged a glance with Nalin before answering. "Our tribe wanted to marry us to old men, warriors who had lost their wives and needed new ones. They did not ask if we wanted to. They simply decided." The silence that followed was heavy. Wyatt felt something tighten in his chest. "So you escaped," he said quietly. "We escaped," Chenoa confirmed. "For 3 weeks we have walked through the desert, some nights without water, many nights without food. But we prefer to die free than to live as someone else's property." Nalin spoke then in her own language. Chenoa translated, "Yesterday you gave water to 3 strangers. You didn't have to. You could have denied us. You could have threatened us. But you gave us what we needed without hesitation. That is why we returned last night and cleaned your barn. That is why we are here now." Wyatt frowned. "What do you want?" "We want to pay our debt," responded Chenoa. "In our culture, when someone saves your life, you owe them labor, you owe them loyalty. We saw your ranch yesterday. It is in need. The fences are broken, the house unrepaired, the garden dead. One man cannot maintain all this. We can help, Chenoa continued. We are good workers. We know the desert better than anyone. We know how to make plants grow where others see only dead earth. We know how to repair, build, and weave. Let us work for you for a season. Then we will leave, and we will be at peace. Wyatt rubbed his face with both hands. This was madness. 25 Apache women on his ranch. The nearest town was 5 days away, but news traveled. What would they say? What trouble would this bring? But when he looked at those women again, he saw something he recognized. Desperation, hope, the same feeling he had had 3 years ago when he arrived at this place seeking a new beginning. How long, he asked finally. Chenoa consulted with Nalin in a low voice. As long as it takes to pay our debt. A month, perhaps 2. We will work hard, 'cause no problems, and then we will disappear. Wyatt looked around his property, the fences needing urgent repair, the garden he had tried to cultivate for 2 years without success, the house falling apart because he never had time to fix it, the barn that was too big for one man. Where will you sleep? He asked. In the barn, Chenoa answered immediately. We saw that you live there. It is large. There is enough space. We will not bother you. The barn is mine, Wyatt said firmly. For a moment, disappointment crossed the women's faces, but then Wyatt continued. You can stay in it. I will move to the house. It's time I repaired it anyway. A murmur of surprise ran through the group. Nalin spoke again, and Chenoa translated with a smile. She says you are a strange man, but a good one. Wyatt almost smiled. I'm probably crazy, but you're right. I can't keep this place alone. If you want to work, work. But there are rules. We listen, said Chenoa. First rule, no one enters my house without permission. Second rule, the well water is shared, but used carefully. Third rule, if anyone comes from town asking, you cause no problems. You are here because I hired you. Understood? Chenoa translated quickly. The 25 women nodded in unison. Then I suppose you have work, said Wyatt. The barn is yours. There are blankets in the house I can bring. And welcome, I guess. He hadn't finished speaking when the women dispersed like water. They organized themselves without the need for words, dividing into groups heading to different parts of the ranch. Some went to the fences, others to the garden. A group began inspecting the barn from the outside. Wyatt stood in the middle of the organized chaos, feeling completely lost on his own property. Chenoa approached him. Thank you, she said simply. You don't know what this means to us. I hope I don't regret this, muttered Wyatt, watching as the women worked with an efficiency he had never seen. 10 women had headed to the broken fences on the east side. They worked in perfect synchronization, some holding posts while others tied the wire with precise movements. They didn't speak but seemed to communicate with simple gestures and glances. Another group of 8 women had surrounded the dead garden. They knelt in the dry earth, touching it with their hands, examining it as if it could speak to them. One of them took seeds from a small sack tied to her waist. Another began digging small channels with her bare hands. The remaining 7 cleaned the inside of the barn. Wyatt could hear the sound of improvised brooms sweeping away old straw. Soft voices sang something in their language, a melody that floated in the hot desert air. By noon, the ranch had changed. The eastern fences were repaired. The garden had neat rows of tilled earth, ready for planting. The barn was clean and organized. Wyatt watched everything from the shade of his house with a cup of coffee in hand, and wondering if he was dreaming. Nalin approached him with Chenoa translating by her side. She asks if you have more tools, hammers, nails, wood. In the shed, replied Wyatt, pointing to a small structure behind the house. But it's all old and rusty, Chenoa translated. Nalin nodded and walked toward the shed. Minutes later, 3 women emerged, carrying tools Wyatt had forgotten he owned. The sun began to set when they finally stopped. The women gathered by the well, drinking water carefully, without wasting a drop. Then they headed to the barn and disappeared inside. Wyatt entered his house for the first time in months. It was dusty, with cobwebs in the corners and furniture covered with old sheets. He sighed. Tomorrow he would start cleaning it. That night, while trying to sleep on a mattress that creaked with every movement, he heard soft voices from the barn, low laughter, the sound of women who could finally rest without fear. And for the first time in 3 years, Wyatt did not feel completely alone on his land. A week had passed. Wyatt woke up early as always, but this time the ranch was already alive with activity. The Apache women rose before dawn, working in silence, while the stars still shone in the sky. The change was notable. The fences were completely repaired. The garden showed the first green shoots of life. The barn looked brand new, with improvised curtains the women had woven to create private spaces within. But Wyatt needed supplies. The well water was abundant, but food was scarce. 26 mouths were many more than one. "I have to go to town," he told Chenoa that morning. "We need flour, beans, salt, basic things." Chenoa translated to Nalan, who nodded with understanding. "How long will you be gone?" 3 days there, 3 back, maybe a day in town." Wyatt paused. "Will you be okay here alone?" Nalan spoke, and Chenoa smiled as she translated. "She says we survived 3 weeks in the desert with nothing. A few days on a ranch with water and a roof will be a rest." Wyatt prepared his horse and a mule to carry the supplies. Before leaving, he called Chenoa. "If anyone comes, anyone at all, tell them I hired you, that you are ranch hands. Nothing else." "Understood," responded Chenoa. The journey to town was long and hot. Wyatt used the time to think about what he would say if anyone asked. The truth was complicated. 25 Apache women escaping forced marriages sounded like the kind of story that would cause trouble. When he arrived in the town of Dry Creek on the 3rd day, the sun was at its highest point. The place was small, dusty, with a main street and wooden buildings worn by the desert wind. Wyatt tied his horse in front of the general store. The owner, a man named Samuel with a prominent belly and gray mustache, greeted him from behind the counter. "Wyatt, we haven't seen you in months. We thought the desert had swallowed you." "I'm still alive," responded Wyatt, handing him a list. "I need all this, double the usual portion." Samuel raised his eyebrows as he read. "Double? Do you have visitors?" Wyatt kept his expression neutral. "I hired help. The ranch is too big for one man." "Help?" Samuel leaned over the counter with curiosity. "Who is crazy enough to go live 5 days from town?" "People who need work," Wyatt replied simply. "Can you get this or not?" While Samuel prepared the order, other men entered the store. Wyatt recognized some. Tom Harris, owner of a ranch to the north, Bill Morrison, the blacksmith, and Jack Cooper, who always seemed to be where he wasn't called. "I heard you hired help," said Tom, getting straight to the point. "How many?" "Enough to keep the place running," responded Wyatt, avoiding the number. "Where did you get workers?" insisted Jack. "Everyone here is looking for extra hands, and there's no one available." "I got lucky," said Wyatt, loading the first sacks onto his mule. Bill, the blacksmith, crossed his arms. "Look, Wyatt, we don't want to meddle in your affairs, but the desert is dangerous. If you brought people from outside, the town has a right to know who they are." Wyatt stopped and looked them directly in the eye. "They are workers, honest. They cause no problems. They work hard, and that's all I need." "But who are they?" pressed Jack. "People who needed a new beginning," responded Wyatt firmly. "Like me when I arrived here 3 years ago. Like half the people in this town." Tom Harris nodded slowly. "That's fair, but understand our concern, Wyatt. Water is scarce in these lands. Your ranch has the only large well for miles around. If there are more people using that water..." There was the real problem. "The well is fine," said Wyatt. "It has enough water for everyone. I'm not taking anything from anyone." "For now," muttered Jack. "But what if the summer is drier than usual? What if your people use all the water?" Samuel intervened from the counter. "Jack has a point, Wyatt. We all depend on the same underground sources. If your well runs dry, ours might too." Wyatt felt frustration growing in his chest. "I've lived there for 3 years. The well has never dropped more than 2 feet, not even in the worst summer. There is enough water." "For how many people?" asked Tom. "That is the real question. How many workers did you hire?" Silence stretched through the store. Everyone awaited his answer. Enough, repeated Wyatt. And the water is fine. If you're so worried, you can come verify it yourselves. Maybe we will, said Jack challengingly. Bill, the blacksmith, raised a hand. Calm down, everyone. Wyatt is a good man. If he says there's no problem with the water, I believe him. He looked at Wyatt. But you understand why we're nervous, right? This town depends on water. Families depend on water. I understand, said Wyatt, and I promise I'm not putting anyone's resources at risk. My ranch sustains itself. Samuel finished packing the supplies. That's a mount, Wyatt. By the way, this is a lot of food. More than 2 or 3 workers would need. Wyatt paid without commenting, loaded the rest of the supplies onto his mule, and prepared to leave. Before going, Tom Harris approached. Wyatt, one more thing. The sheriff asked about you last week. He wanted to know if you'd seen strange groups moving through the desert. Wyatt's heart skipped a beat, but he kept his expression calm. The sheriff? Why? Apparently, there are reports of Apache women who escaped from their tribe to the north. The tribal chief is looking for them. Tom looked him directly in the eyes. Have you seen anything? Wyatt held his gaze. The desert is big. I see coyotes, snakes, and occasionally an eagle, nothing else. Tom nodded slowly. All right, just wanted you to know. If you see anything strange, the sheriff wants you to let him know. I'll keep it in mind, said Wyatt, mounting his horse. As he left town, he felt multiple pairs of eyes following him. Tom's words echoed in his head. The sheriff was looking for the women, the tribe was looking for them. And now the town suspected something strange was happening at his ranch. The return journey was tense. Wyatt kept his eyes on the horizon, looking for any sign of followers. He camped without a fire the first 2 nights, sleeping with one eye open. When he finally saw his ranch in the distance on the 3rd day, he felt a relief he hadn't expected, but also a new worry. How long could they keep this secret? And what would happen when the truth finally came to light? Wyatt arrived at the ranch at sunset on the 3rd day. The women received him with visible relief on their faces. Chenoa ran toward him as he dismounted. We were worried. We thought maybe you had trouble. The town is nervous, said Wyatt, unloading the supplies. They ask about the water, and the sheriff is looking for Apache women who escaped their tribe. Chenoa's face paled. She translated quickly to Nalin, who had appeared behind her. The leader listened in silence, her expression becoming serious. What did you tell them? Asked Chenoa. That I hired workers, nothing more. But they aren't fools. They know something is going on. Wyatt looked at the women gathered around. You need to be careful. If anyone comes from town, let me speak. That night, after the supplies were stored and distributed, Wyatt sat on the porch of his house. The night breeze was cool, a relief from the brutal heat of the day. He watched the barn where faint lights flickered in the windows. Soft voices sang in the Apache language. For a moment, everything seemed peaceful, almost normal. Then Nalin left the barn and walked directly toward him. Chenoa came behind, ready to translate. She wants to talk to you, said Chenoa. Wyatt nodded, pointing to the porch steps. The 2 women sat down. Nalin spoke for a long time. Her words were fluid and charged with emotion. Chenoa translated in pauses. She says she understands the risk you are taking for us. That it is not your problem, not your responsibility, but you did it anyway. Chenoa paused while Nalin continued. She says that if we cause too much trouble, we will leave. We don't want to destroy your life. Wyatt looked toward the dark horizon. Where would you go? We don't know, admitted Chenoa. Further west, perhaps, or south toward Mexico, anywhere we can start over. The desert will kill you, said Wyatt simply. You were lucky to arrive here alive. You wouldn't survive another long trip without water or supplies. So what do you suggest? Asked Chenoa. Wyatt remained silent for a moment. You stay. But we need a plan. If the sheriff comes, if the tribe comes, we need a story that works. Nalin spoke again, and Chenoa translated with a small smile. She says you are smarter than you look. Despite the tension, Wyatt almost smiled. Tell her she is too. They spent the next hour discussing strategies. If anyone asked, the women were hired workers from a distant town. They would not speak Apache in public. They would stay within the property as much as possible. It was a weak plan, but it was all they had. 3 days later, the plan was put to the test. Wyatt was repairing the roof of the house when he saw dust on the horizon. Riders, several of them, coming directly toward the ranch. "Chenoa," he shouted. "Visitors." The response was immediate. The women disappeared inside the barn like ghosts. In seconds, the ranch seemed deserted, except for Wyatt. 5 riders approached. They were not from town. Their clothes and the way they rode revealed something different. When they were closer, Wyatt felt his stomach tighten. They were Apache warriors, young men with painted faces and visible weapons. They stopped 20 paces away. The leader, a tall man with a scar crossing his left cheek, spoke in English with a heavy accent. "We seek women. 25 from our tribe. Have you seen them?" Wyatt climbed down from the roof slowly, keeping his hands visible. "This is a private ranch. Who are you?" "I am Kuruk," responded the leader. "These women stole property from our tribe. They escaped their promises. They are in debt to their future husbands." "I haven't seen anyone," said Wyatt firmly. "I live alone here." Kuruk looked around the ranch. His eyes stopped on the repaired fences, the flourishing garden, the clean barn. "Your ranch looks very well kept for one man. Hard work." "Impossible," said Kuruk, dismounting. The other 4 warriors followed him. "This work requires many hands. Where are your workers?" "I have no workers." Kuruk walked toward the barn. "Then you won't mind if we check?" Wyatt moved to block his path. "Yes, I do mind. This is my property. You have no right." The 5 warriors tensed. Hands went to knives. The situation was about to explode. Then the barn door opened. Nayland walked out with her head held high. Behind her, one by one, the 25 women emerged. They formed a line behind their leader, with no fear visible on their faces. Kuruk smiled, but it was not a kind smile. "There they are. I knew they were here." Nayland spoke in her language, words fast and strong. Kuruk responded with equal intensity. The exchange lasted several minutes, voices rising. Finally, Chenoa stepped forward and translated for Wyatt. "Kuruk says we must return, that we belong to the tribe, that the men waiting for us paid a bride price." "And what did Nayland say?" asked Wyatt. "That we are not property, that we rejected those marriages, that we chose our own path." Kuruk spoke directly to Wyatt. "These women are troublesome. They will bring you suffering. It is better that you hand them over now." "No," said Wyatt simply.
The warriors looked at each other in surprise. Kuruk narrowed his eyes. "What did you say?" "I said no. They are here by their own will."
"I will not hand them over." "It is not your decision," grunted Kuruk. "On my land it is." Kuruk took a step forward, his hand on his knife. "You are 1 man, we are 5, and they have no weapons. How do you plan to stop us?" Wyatt did not retreat. "You can try, but it won't end well for anyone." The tension was so thick it could be cut. No one moved, no one breathed. Then Nayland spoke again, calmer this time. Kuruk listened, his expression slowly changing from anger to something more complex. When she finished, Kuruk remained silent for a long time. Finally he spoke, and Chenoa translated. Nayland reminded him of the old customs. Before the white men came, before everything changed, Apache women had a voice. They could reject marriages, they could choose their destiny. Chenoa paused. She asked him when they became like the whites who oppressed them. Kuruk looked at the 25 women, then at Wyatt, then back at Nayland. He spoke slowly. "If they are here by choice," translated Chenoa, "and if this man does not force them, then we cannot take them. But if someday they wish to return, the tribe will accept them. And if this man treats them badly, we will return." Wyatt nodded, understood. Kuruk mounted his horse. Before leaving, he looked at Wyatt one last time. "Take care of them well, white man, or we will find you again." The 5 warriors rode away, their silhouette disappearing into the desert. When they were gone, Wyatt felt his legs nearly give way. He sat heavily on the porch floor. The women approached slowly. Nayland knelt before him and put a hand on his shoulder. She spoke softly. "She says thank you," translated Chenoa with tears in her eyes. "She says you are a warrior without need of weapons." Wyatt looked at the 25 women gathered around. "We are a team now. We protect each other." For the first time since they arrived, all the women smiled. 2 months had passed since the confrontation with the warriors. The ranch had changed in ways Wyatt never would have imagined possible. The garden flourished with vegetables growing in perfect rows, bright red tomatoes, fat pumpkins, green chilies, beans climbing vertical poles. The women had used ancient desert techniques, creating irrigation systems that used every drop of water with maximum efficiency. The fences were completely repaired and reinforced. The barn was not only cleaned but transformed into a livable space with fabric divisions, small storage areas, and even woven decorations hanging from the beams. But the most significant change was another. The women had begun weaving blankets, rugs, and bags decorated with traditional Apache patterns. The work was extraordinary, each piece unique, each design telling a story. Wyatt had taken some pieces to town on his last trip. The reaction was immediate. "Where did you get this?" the sheriff's wife had asked, holding a blanket with shining eyes. "It's beautiful. How much do you want for it?" Wyatt had improvised a price, thinking it was too high. The woman paid without haggling and asked if there were more. Now, on this cool dawn, Wyatt prepared for another trip to town, but this time he carried 20 woven pieces carefully packed in the back of his cart. Chenoa approached as he loaded the last box. "Are you sure they will sell?" "Last time I sold 5 pieces in less than an hour," responded Wyatt. "The townspeople have never seen work like this. They love it." Nalin appeared with a small package wrapped in cloth. She handed it to Wyatt with soft words that Chenoa translated. "It is for you, a gift for all you have done." Wyatt unwrapped the cloth and found a woven bracelet, similar to the one the first 3 women had left months ago, but more elaborate. It had blue and white beads, forming a pattern that seemed to represent mountains under a clear sky. "It's beautiful," said Wyatt, putting it on his wrist. "Thank you." The journey to town was quiet. Wyatt arrived at noon and parked his cart in front of the general store. Samuel came out immediately. "Wyatt, did you bring more of those blankets?" 20 pieces, responded Wyatt, beginning to unload. In less than 30 minutes, a crowd had formed. Women from town examined the blankets and rugs, exclaiming over the colors and patterns. The prices Wyatt asked were high, but no one haggled. By dinner time, he had sold 18 pieces. Only 2 remained. Tom Harris approached while Wyatt counted the money. "Good business you have there. Your workers make all this?" "Yes," responded Wyatt. "They are very talented." "We still haven't met them," commented Tom. "You've had them for 3 months, and no one in town has seen a face. They work hard. They don't have much free time to visit towns." Tom nodded slowly. "The sheriff's wife bought 3 blankets. She is delighted. She says she wants to meet the artisans to thank them personally." Wyatt felt tension in his back. Perhaps in the future. For now, they are busy with the next collection. That night, Wyatt slept in the small back room of the store that Samuel rented to travelers. But sleep did not come easily. Tom's words resonated in his mind. People wanted to meet the women. It was natural, normal, but also dangerous. The next morning, he began the return journey. He carried fresh supplies and, more importantly, money. Lots of money, enough to buy materials for more weaving, food for months, and perhaps some new tools. When he arrived at the ranch on the 3rd day, the women received him with excitement. Wyatt unloaded the supplies and then gathered everyone in the open space in front of the barn. "I sold almost everything," he announced, emptying the money onto an improvised table. "And people want more, much more." A murmur of surprise ran through the group. Chenoa translated for those who didn't understand English. "This changes things," continued Wyatt. "You are no longer just paying a debt. You are building a business, a future." Nalin spoke and Chenoa translated. "What do you propose?" "I propose we become partners. You create, I sell, we split the profits. This ranch can be more than just a hiding place. It can be a home, a real business." The women looked at each other. There were quick conversations in their language, debates, questions. Finally, Nalin spoke again. Chenoa translated with a smile. "She accepts, but with one condition. that we stop calling it your ranch. From now on, it is our ranch." Wyatt felt something warm in his chest. He extended his hand to Nalin. "Deal." Nalin took his hand firmly. The other 24 women approached, forming a circle around them, their hands joining in the center. A month later, the ranch was unrecognizable. They had built a separate workshop for weaving, with good light and space for several women to work simultaneously. The garden had expanded to double its original size. They had even started raising chickens with a new coop built behind the barn. Wyatt had made 3 more trips to town, each time selling more pieces. The demand was incredible. Merchants from neighboring towns began to appear, wanting to buy wholesale. But with success came new challenges. One day, the town sheriff appeared without warning. Wyatt saw him approaching and his heart raced. "Sheriff," greeted Wyatt when the man dismounted. "What brings you here?" "Curiosity," responded the sheriff, an older man named Dawson, with gray hair and astute eyes. "My wife won't stop talking about these blankets. She says they are the most beautiful thing she has ever seen. I wanted to meet the artisans." "They are working," said Wyatt quickly. "I won't disturb them," said Dawson, walking toward the workshop. "Just a quick hello." Wyatt had no choice but to follow him. When they entered the workshop, 5 women looked up from their work. Nalin was among them, her hands moving skillfully over a loom. The sheriff stopped dead in his tracks. His eyes widened as he immediately recognized what he was seeing. "They are Apache," he said simply. Wyatt did not respond. There was no point in denying the obvious. The sheriff looked at the women, then the workshop, then back at Wyatt. "How many?" 25. Dawson whistled low. "The women who escaped, the ones the tribe was looking for months ago. They chose to be here," said Wyatt firmly. "They are not prisoners. They are partners." The sheriff remained silent for a long time. He walked around the workshop, examining the work, watching how the women continued weaving without showing fear. "Are they causing you problems?" he asked finally. Just hard work and good results. The water? The well is fine. It has never dropped more than normal." Dawson nodded slowly. He approached Nalin, who looked him directly in the eyes without lowering her gaze. "Are you here by your own will?" asked the sheriff. Chenoa, who had entered behind them, translated. Nalin responded with clear and firm words. "She says yes," translated Chenoa. "She says this is their home now, that they are building something new here, something better." The sheriff studied her face, then looked at the other women. "Do all feel the same?" The 25 nodded in unison. Dawson scratched his chin. "This is going to cause conversations in town. You know how people are. Some won't be happy." "And you?" asked Wyatt. The sheriff looked around once more. The prosperous ranch, the women working peacefully, the clear evidence of successful cooperation. "I say that if no one is being hurt, if everyone is here by choice, and if they are contributing positively." He paused. "Then it is not the sheriff's business." Wyatt felt relief flooding his body. "But," continued Dawson, "you need to make this official. Register the business, pay taxes, make everything legal." "Understood," responded Wyatt. The sheriff mounted his horse. Before leaving, he looked at Wyatt one last time. "My wife wants another blanket. The blue one with star patterns. Can you get it?" Wyatt almost smiled. "You'll have it next week." When the sheriff left, the women came out of the workshop. They surrounded Wyatt, all speaking at once in a mix of Apache and Spanish. Nalin spoke, and Chenoa translated with tears in her eyes. "She says that finally we have permission to exist, to be ourselves, to build our future." Note: original script included a channel subscription request here. Translated for completeness. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel, friends. Let me know in the comments where you are watching from. California, Texas, Florida, New York, Arizona, Mexico, Colombia, Argentina, Peru. I love hearing from all of you. This story continues in the next chapter. That night they celebrated. The women prepared a special meal with vegetables from the garden. Wyatt contributed meat he had bought in town. They all sat together under the desert stars, eating, laughing, sharing stories. Wyatt looked around the circle of faces illuminated by the firelight. 6 months ago, he was alone. Now he had a family, a strange, unconventional but real family. Nalan raised her cup in a toast. She spoke words in Apache, then Chinoa translated, "To new beginnings, to second chances. To the family we choose, not the one imposed on us." Everyone raised their cups. "To family," repeated Wyatt. And under the vast desert sky, 26 people from 2 different worlds celebrated the future they had built together.